Welcome back. All right, I want to talk about the Winnipeg Jets today. The Winnipeg Jets are a team that is off to a very good start. They're leading their division. Not a lot of talk about it, so I want to talk about it. The Winnipeg Jets are one of the Canadian franchises that definitely falls through the cracks. The other one being the Ottawa Senators. They don't get nearly as much play in the media as all the other Canadian teams do. And so I want to remedy some of that today by talking about the fact they're 18-8-1. Whether they're at home or on the road, the record's very good. Now, I also think it's important to talk about this after the loss last night against Washington because that was a tough loss. But if anything, this team has shown that they can bounce back. At home, they're 10-4 on the season, and away from home, they're 8-4-1. So they're good on the road, they're good at home. Against the East, they're 4-4, so they've not had nearly as many games against the East as some of their other Western brethren, which might affect their record being pretty good because we know that the East has a stronger track record than the West to this point in the season. Against the West, they're very solid, 14-4-1 overall. Really, they've done quite well. So again, that loss against Washington, instead of them going to 5-3 if they'd beaten them, instead they're 4-4. So we would be having a different discussion today if they were 5-3 against Washington. Would I be doing this video if they'd beaten Washington? We'll never know. In terms of the schedule, in October they were 5-3-1 against their opposition. In November they were 9-3, so really strong November, and in December thus far they're 4-2. So even again with that loss last night, instead of being 5-1, they're 4-2. So this is why after the game, when being interviewed, they're saying all of those things about, yeah, we'll be fine. We're not worried. We'll just stick to our system because the system works. Whatever Rick Bowness is doing here is absolutely working for this team. So I wanted to look at the wins and who they're against. And on the left-hand side here, these are the wins you should be getting. And they're pretty good at getting the wins against the teams that were expected to be either bad or teams that have been really bad. And there's a little bit of a discrepancy between these columns, but it's fine. Against Anaheim, they're 2-0. Against Arizona, they're 1-0. Against Chicago, they're 3-0. They're basically done with Chicago. They're 1-0 against Montreal. They did have that loss against Columbus. You could put an asterisk there, though, because, Line A against his former team and Roslovic against his former team, and guys get fired up in that kind of situation. Of course, for Dubois, there's still that cloud over the whole Dubois situation, but I think they've played it pretty well. They gave him the 1 year, and they're like, we're going to kick this down the road, and it's worked. Remember, before the season started, all we heard about was how things in Winnipeg were kind of stale, and they should have made big moves. They didn't make any, so they weren't expected to be any good. And so, yeah, that was the conversation that was out there, which I thought was weird because, yeah, the team that's stale is the one that had been pretty darn good before a down year last year. And I think giving that core another kick at the can was the right way to go about it. I think that an overly reactionary management team is one that probably doesn't stay employed for very long. So against the other teams in the league, we'll go through this. Against Carolina, they won the only game they've played against Carolina. They've lost against Calgary once this year. They've beaten Colorado twice. They've beaten Dallas 2 out of 3 meetings. So that's a divisional opponent that they want to be beating, and they have. Against Florida, they won the only game against Florida. They beat LA the only time they've played them. They did lose against Minnesota the one meeting. That is, of course, a one to keep an eye on because that's a divisional opponent, and Minnesota's a team that could at some point threaten for division lead. Against New York, they're 1-0. Against Pittsburgh, they lost the only game they've played against Pittsburgh. They beat Seattle in the only game they played against Seattle. I debated whether to put Seattle on this side or this side. Doesn't matter. Against St. Louis, they're 2-0. So St. Louis is misery. If they'd beaten Winnipeg twice, I probably wouldn't be here doing this video either. And St. Louis would have a better record. Toronto, they lost against Toronto. They are 0-1-1 against Vegas, and they're 0-1 against Washington. Now, the interesting thing with Vegas is they've lost both meetings with Vegas, and that's next up. That's on Tuesday. So for them to turn this around and not have... Because one thing I've noticed with Winnipeg is when they're playing really well, not a lot is said about them, but as soon as things start to fall apart, then it's what's wrong with the Jets? So, and again, that feels like it's a similar thing with Ottawa. But they have Vegas, and then on Thursday they have Nashville. So those are both home games. Then they go out on the road for 2. They play in Vancouver on Saturday, and then they play in Seattle the next night. They've proven in recent historical matchups, they're pretty good against Vancouver. Last year they had their struggles against Vancouver. This is not last year's Jets. They should go in and beat Vancouver. With Vancouver's inconsistency and with the issues they have with their penalty kill and everything, I could see Winnipeg going in and beating Vancouver. Seattle might be a little bit tougher to predict. Seattle is, I mean, last night they went in and they beat Florida, but the 3 games before that, Seattle looked pretty ordinary. So it's interesting how Seattle's great on the road, not as good at home, and so maybe Winnipeg can go in and take advantage of that. Remember, they're 8-4-1 away from home. Then they come back home the following Tuesday to play against Ottawa before going back out on the road for 2 games before the Christmas break at Boston and at Washington. So this is not a really difficult schedule, but it's not an overly simple, easy schedule either. You have Vegas first. You have Nashville, which is not going to be overly easy. They haven't played Nashville yet this year. And then you've got the 2-game road trip, which looks winnable. You've got a game at home against Ottawa, winnable. And then you go to Boston, who they haven't played yet, and you go to Washington, who just pretty handedly beat them last night. So the teams they haven't played, you guys can see, Boston, pretty good team. They got to play them twice. Buffalo, unpredictable. They got to play them twice. Detroit, same thing, twice with Detroit. You've got Edmonton. They have 3 games against Edmonton, and those matchups are usually pretty rough, pretty brutal. Usually some pushing and shoving and some fighting will break out here and there. So we'll see how those matchups go. They don't have any before Christmas. So Edmonton in the new year is going to play a role in where Winnipeg ends up and vice versa as well. Nashville, they have a number of meetings against Nashville. They are a divisional opponent, so they play each other 3 or 4 times. New Jersey, they've got twice. The Islanders twice. New Jersey, of course, really strong first third of the season for New Jersey. The Islanders have looked really strong as well for the most part. Ottawa, no telling. It'll be interesting to see, not this Tuesday like tomorrow, but next Tuesday how that matchup goes. Then you've got Philadelphia. Well, Philadelphia in the midst of the rebuild not looking very good. That's 2 winnable games there. San Jose, that's 3 winnable games against San Jose as well. Tampa Bay is going to be tough. And then with Vancouver, they got 3 games against Vancouver, a team that, again, historically, they've got a pretty good record against. So when we look at the overall stats, what stands out right away is Morrissey. Morrissey has been absolutely fantastic thus far this season. 5 goals, 26 assists, 31 points in 27 games for Josh Morrissey. No idea why I want to call him Jake. No idea. It's a name that comes out here and there. Anyways, Josh Morrissey, absolutely remarkable, and he's going to set career highs in his points totals before he's reached the halfway mark of the season. So, phenomenal start to the season for him, first third. Dubois, 27 games, 14 goals, 15 assists, 29 points. Maybe Dubois doesn't want to stay in Winnipeg past this season. Maybe Dubois wants to go to Montreal. Maybe Dubois has all these dreams and fantasies and ideas of what he wants to do with the rest of his career. Right now, he's a very good Winnipeg Jet. He's scoring above a point per game, and he is part of the solution rather than the problem. And that is ideal for Dubois as well, because you don't want to have the appearance of not what. Remember how things ended in Columbus? You don't want to be doing that again, because you may put yourself in a position where, let's say, a Montreal looks and goes, so if he's not happy here, is he going to stop playing well too? So this year, we have not seen that in Winnipeg. He's playing quite well. Kyle Connors bounced back from a slow start. 27 games now, 11 goals, 18 assists, 29 points. I would not rule out a 40-goal season for Connor with the way he's been playing, even though he's not trending in that direction when you look at 11 goals in 27 games. If you look at the recent numbers, definitely getting better. Blake Wheeler, 27 games, 9 goals, 16 assists, 25 points. Remember before the season we were talking about Wheeler having the captaincy taken away. I saw people saying, well, they need to get rid of Wheeler and you can't have that in the locker room and that's just going to linger around the Jets. And this is a terrible idea. And there's this huge split in the locker room and they play Red Rover, but they don't play it nicely. They just clothesline each other and it's awful. Like it got ridiculous. This is why I don't report on split locker rooms. This is why I don't talk about how, well, this side of the dressing room wants that and that side. I don't, because you know what cures that? Winning. Winning cures that. Because the guy in the stall next to you, you can't stand him, but you won the game. So you're like, all right, I can tolerate you. But if you're in a 4-game losing streak, that guy's face ticks you off a heck of a lot more. So right now the team's doing really well. So whatever was out there with Wheeler losing the captaincy and all of this discussion about Winnipeg's leadership, it's kind of fallen by the wayside. It to me rekindles that argument of how important is a captaincy to each individual team. Some teams, I think it's very important, and for others, I don't think it's nearly as important. Mark Scheifele in 27 games, 15 goals, 8 assists, 23 points. Interestingly enough, Scheifele a little bit below his usual point per game standard, but the goal scoring's been fantastic. So, really happy with Scheifele's start to the season. Again, first third. Cole Perfetti has been really good, and I think he doesn't get nearly the attention because he plays in Winnipeg as he would if he played here in Vancouver, if he played in Toronto, if he was in New York. In 27 games, 6 goals, 12 assists, 18 points. Playing like a veteran, doesn't look like a young kid out there, and again, flies under the radar. Adam Lowry's off to the best start of his career. 27 games, 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points, leading to him maybe getting played in situations he wouldn't have been in previous seasons. He was getting double shifted last night. They were looking for some offense. That's kind of weird. It has to be kind of odd for him too. But he takes that challenge and he's done quite well. The 7 goals in 27 games is legit. He is one of the most hardworking forwards in the game. Pionk, everybody knows I like Pionk. Not a surprise. 27 games, 4 goals, 9 assists, 13 points. Reliable, solid defenseman. So you've got this good scoring, this good group, and it's just worked. And then in net, you've got Hellebuck. Huge bounce back season for him. 14-6-1 with a .930 save percentage. Behind him, Riddick. Been discussion about Riddick and how reliable he is or isn't, and I get it because he's coming off of a couple of rough years. The .893 save percentage, not ideal, but he is 4-2. And the fact they've won 4 out of 6 decisions with him in net is great. What you want from your backup goaltender isn't just the stats, it's the wins, right? So if you know that your backup goaltender is winning 66.7% of his decisions, you're probably pretty happy with your backup goaltending. And I think Riddick's been playing better. Plus, I think the team in front of him has adapted to Riddick and started protecting him from some of the more dangerous chances. I think there's more shots being blocked with him in net. I don't have the stats to back all that up, but it feels like Winnipeg plays a different style when Hellebuck's in net as opposed to when Riddick's in net, which is understandable because every goaltender's different. If you can play to that goaltender's strengths, you have a better chance for long-term success. Their power play is 15th in the league at 22.7%. The big improvement from last year is the penalty kill. It started off pretty rough, but now they're 4th overall with an 83.6% penalty kill. I did a double take when I saw that because, again, to start the season, both Winnipeg and Vancouver, their penalty kills were awful, but they've definitely picked it up. And this is one of those Rick Bowness things, right? Defensively, your team's going to get better. The penalty kill gets better. And overall, your record gets better. So this is a team that has definitely put, I think, Rick Bowness into the conversation for Coach of the Year. When they're leading after 1, you can turn the game off. They're 8-0. When they're leading after 2, you can turn the game off. They're 12-0. So this is a key thing, too. We're in a league where, all these losses out of leads. Did you see this team had a 3-goal lead and they blew it? This team was down by 4 and they won. Not with Winnipeg. Winnipeg, it's been pretty, other than the game against Dallas, as crazy as that was, I think that was more of an indication of how crazy Dallas's games are than Winnipeg's. And I know the Carolina game is there too. There's been a couple of them. But overall, Winnipeg, if they're ahead, they're going to win. It might not be the prettiest how they get there, but they're going to win. Now, if they're trailing after 1, you don't have to turn the game off because they're 5-4. If they're trailing after 2, you can maybe turn the game off. They're 1-7. But trailing after 1 and being above 500, that's pretty good. That's a solid record. We are in a league where still, and even despite all of the comebacks, scoring first is very, very important, and we'll talk about that towards the end of this. When it comes to scoring in the first period, they're actually a little bit below water on this one. They've allowed 23, they've scored 19. So they're a little bit below that surface level. You want to be above that surface level, right? Second period, they score 32, they allow 23. Third period, they score 32, they allow 32. So the long change in the second period seems to cause a lot more goals to take place in general. What's interesting is second or third period, both the long change in the second and the short change in the third, their numbers stay remarkably the same. There isn't a big difference. And then in overtime, 3-on-3, these guys are very good 3-on-3. They've scored 6 times 3-on-3, they've allowed 1. Now, the one thing is, of course, when you get into the playoffs, it's not 3-on-3 in overtime, but still, that next goal wins, that sudden death environment, they're very good at that. So this really bodes well for a team playing playoff level hockey, even at this point in the season. They're very good with the lead. When they score first, they're 12-2-1. That is an 800 points percentage. That is 4th overall in the National Hockey League. When they're trailing first, so when they allow that first goal, you don't have to turn the game off. They are 6-6 when they allow the first goal. That is a .500 record. That is 4th overall in the National Hockey League in that category as well. So a lot of things here that point to a change at coach, right? A change behind the bench, a change in team philosophy. Their defense has gotten better. Their goaltending's fantastic. Josh Morrissey's having, I'm going to keep saying Josh Morrissey just because I said Jake, and I'm just floored that I said that. Josh Morrissey's having just a remarkable career year. And this is a team that's been very smart with money, very smart, I think, with how they've decided to trade people and who to trade and who to keep. There are others that aren't on the board that I think have been solid. Morgan Barron has been very good for this team. Saku Manalainen has been remarkable. Now, he's on the IR right now. We'll see how they come through that, of course. But in general, Winnipeg's a team that when somebody gets hurt, the next guy that steps in has been pretty good. Asamont, I mentioned him in a video yesterday. I'll mention him again here. Asamont's been very solid. And overall, this is a team that it feels like could be a very dangerous team. And again, considering how much Canada talks about cup contenders and, oh, can a Canadian team ever win a cup? I've talked about the Winnipeg Jets in previous seasons as being a team that I could see winning a cup. And I'm going to come back to that. After last season, it looked like, this core might need to get broken up. They didn't break it up. Kevin Cheveldayoff, there were plenty of talks in the offseason about how, he didn't do enough to improve this team. Maybe he needs to go. They're 18-8-1. I think he made the right calls, but I'd be interested to know what you think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And one other question. Can this team finish first in their division? There's of course the benefit of Colorado falling off, St. Louis falling off, Minnesota not playing like Minnesota normally does, Nashville falling off a bit. But hey, Winnipeg has won the games that have been scheduled. They've done quite well, and they could end up first. But let me know your thoughts. Do they finish first? Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.